Yes, welcome back, Looney listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. This is episode 98, and you're with your High Priest, Khonshu Ray. I am here. I don't know how I am. As some of you know, I posted feeling a little crook, a bit ordinary lately. I have a bit of a fever, but that does not stop me. Khonshu demands reviews. So I'm here with you. This episode, you probably noticed, is coming out a little late, but hopefully not too late. And it's a special one. We have, as mentioned in our newsletter, two very dedicated loonies on board to help with this massive trade arc review. So let's get into it. There's only a little bit of news, so hopefully, again, maybe when this drops on Wednesday, there might be something new. But the main bit of news that did come out was there's a Moon Knight annual in the Acts of Evil series or crossover across the annuals, and our boy Mooney gets his time in the sun or in the moon. He will be facing off against Chiang the Conqueror. Now, those of you who maybe are unaware of the previous event, which happened in I think it was in the 80s, late 80s, mid to late 80s, was the Acts of Vengeance. This was an awesome event that ran across all the titles, and what it basically did was pit super villains against heroes who they wouldn't normally kind of encounter. So it seems that Acts of Evil is pretty much in the same ilk, and we have Moon Knight fighting Chiang. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how he goes against old Chiang the Conqueror. Chiang's not exactly street level. He transcends time, and he's a cosmic wayfarer, I believe. So he's a pretty big deal, but that hasn't stopped Mooney before. So that will be something to definitely look out for. Let me just pull up the Acts of Evil annuals kind of kick off in July of this year. There's three of them. Miss Marvel annual, she goes up against the Super Skrull. There's the Punisher annual, he goes up against the Brood Queen. That will be very interesting. And the Venom annual sees Venom against Lady Hellbender. And in August, we then have two annuals, one for Deadpool, and he is against Nightmare, which should be a pretty cool one, I think. Deadpool being a little unpredictable should prove to be quite a handful for Nightmare. And She-Hulk, she gets an annual as well, which is great. I mean, she's been off the titles for a while, but she comes back in force, and she is fighting Bullseye, which that's got to be good as well. Although Bullseye is only human, kind of, so to speak, he will give She-Hulk a run for her money. Then in September, we have Ghost Spider versus Arcade. And Arcade seems to be popping up a lot lately. Seems to be a bit of the darling of some of the Marvel writers. He's currently featured in The Amazing Spider-Man, The Hunted, by Nick Spencer, which is a ripping arc. If anyone is keen, it's very fun to read. And then we have Moon Knight, and he, as mentioned, he versus Chiang. And finally, there's Wolverine, and he goes up against Morgan Le Fay. Although I do like Wolverine, that one I'm kind of the least excited for. I feel he's kind of, in the Marvel Comics Presents, although it wasn't Morgan Le Fay, he has come across these magical, mystical, I think it was The Truth by Charles Soule. Wolverine kind of goes up against. So for me, it's not much different there, but still be picking that one up as well. So that is really the only news at hand for Moon Knight. Now, Loonies, we have a big episode for you, so we can't dilly-dally about. We got to get into it. As mentioned, I've got two really dedicated loonies. One, Josh Geronimo Johnson, and the other, Dustin Cold Case Kurtz. And they have provided some reviews for some of the issues of this rather large arc. So what we're covering today, let me just pull up, due to the phase of the moon, of course, as you look into the night sky, you would see a waxing gibbous, and that has decreed that we do a trade arc review. And what we've chosen is a mid-80s, quite a fun run, very different from comics these days. It's the West Coast Avengers. It's a long 8-parter, and it's called Lost in Space and Time. So anyway, without further ado, I am going to throw it to Josh Geronimo Johnson to kick us off. He does the first 2 issues. Take it away, Josh.
Hey, Loonies. This is Josh Geronimo Johnson here, and I'm taking part in summarizing the first 2 issues of this week's review of Avengers West Coast Lost in Space-Time. I'm going to be covering the first 2 issues, number 17 and 18, and the other 2 guys, Ray and Dustin, they were going to take the remaining issues. So this story was released in from February to September 1987. Again, ranging from issues number 17 to 24. Written by Steve Englehart. Were Joe Sinnott, Kim DeMolder, Mike Macklin. Colorists were Ken Feduniewicz, Christy Scheel, and Paul Beckton. Letters Janice Chiang and Tom Orzechowski. Editor Mark Gruenwald, and Editor-in-Chief Jim Shooter. This story is available. You can find it in single issues, or you can find it in a trade paperback. Okay, so issue number 17, titled Out of Time, released in February 1987. The West Coast Avengers fly out to Albuquerque to try to recruit Firebird as their 6th member. They leave Hank behind, not paying attention to how suicidally despondent he's been. When the team gets to Bonita's apartment, they learn that she's been missing for over a month. In the process of searching for more information around town, they're ambushed by a group of villains apparently working for one called Dominus. The flying, heart-generating Sunstroke claims to be human, using powers of his own devising, but explains that his cohorts, Butte, Gilla, and Cactus, are merely artificial humanoids created by Dominus. The Avengers gain the upper hand, but as they do, a mysterious force being grabs the desert dwellers and whisks them away from the battle. Iron Man tracks them to a base hidden in the mountain in the Arizona desert and recognizes the uniform of the desert dwellers boss inside as belonging to the alien Lucifer. Dominus explains that he won't fail in his inherited mission to enslave the world. To get the Avengers out of the way, as soon as they enter his chamber, Dominus activates the time platform they stepped onto, a damaged version of Dr. Doom's device he found in the desert that can only travel backwards in time. Dominus laughs maniacally, confident that he has trapped the Avengers in the distant past. Meanwhile, Hank Pym spends the day settling accounts preparing to kill himself. Just as he's holding the gun to his head, he's interrupted by the sudden appearance of Bonita, now wearing the identity of La Asperita, who brings him a message of hope from God. And then we move on to issue number 18, titled Lost in Space-Time Part 2, Time Was, released in March 1987. The Avengers arrive in the Arizona desert of 1876, realize their plight. The time platform has come back with them, but it's broken and it can only travel backwards in time. Iron Man thinks he might be able to fix it with parts from another time machine, though as he's looking at it, Wonder Man is trying to horn in to one-up him. The entire team is soon distracted by the sounds of nearby battle involving Hawkeye's old allies, Two-Gun Kid, Rawhide Kid, and the Phantom Rider. The Avengers join up with the Western heroes to take on an alliance of many of their villains, including Iron Mask, Hurricane, Rattler, Red Raven, Dr. Danger, a Fat Man, and the Living Totem. During the successful adventure, Phantom Rider takes a powerful liking to Mockingbird. Wonder Man takes the time platform to Two-Gun blacksmith specialist Boom Boom Brown, but they're not able to make much progress on repairing it. Wonder Man then makes the suggestion to go farther back in time, specifically to ancient Egypt of Rama-WHHUUUUT, where they can gain access to his own time machine. Hawkeye agrees to the risky proposition, though to test their control with a shorter jump, Simon first sets the dial back just 100 years. However, just as the platform activates, Phantom Rider attacks, knocking out and absconding with Mockingbird before anyone can stop it. The 4 remaining Avengers are stuck heading back a century. And in the present day, Esperita talks Hank down from a suicide attempt. Okay, so there's the setup for the story of the first 2 parts. As you could tell in the summary, there's no Moon Knight in any of these issues. He doesn't come in until a little later in the story, but he is pretty cool when he does show up, but that's not for a couple issues yet. The team that we are dealing with, though, for those who don't know, the members of the West Coast Avengers currently is Iron Man, Wonder Man, Hawkeye, who is the leader, Mockingbird, who is Hawkeye's wife, and Tigra. And then also hanging around with them, I don't think he's not an official member, but he's sort of just hanging around in the compound, is Hank Pym, who everyone knows was Ant-Man, Giant Man, Goliath, Yellow Jacket. He's had a multitude of different identities. And I guess that's the first thing I'll talk about Hank Pym. He actually goes through a lot of difficult times, and it sort of all culminates to this. A couple months ago, I recorded an episode with Ray, and we talked about the Avengers, issue 211, and a couple issues after that. And we talked about sort of Hank's sort of downfall. He really went off the deep end, and he had that infamous moment where he had Janet, and he sort of lost his mind, which I thought was a really powerful story, and I kind of have a soft spot for him because you see him go through all these horrible things, and he feels bad for it, and he still feels that. Now, those stories came out, I think, in 81. Now, this is 87. This is 6 years afterwards, and he's still feeling guilt about everything that he's done. Not only the stuff that I mentioned, but he created Ultron. And he even goes to say, so basically what he does is, once the Avengers leave to go do their mission, and Hank is by himself in the compound, and he basically just ultimately decides that he wants to commit suicide. And he is going to go through with it. You go and you see him, he's writing letters out to everyone that he knows, like all of his superhero, teammates and former teammates. He just has a stack of just suicide notes written out to everybody. Which I do think it's kind of interesting that he does write a letter to each person that he sort of cared about or was important to him, and not just write just one. He wrote one for each individual. And he does have a phone call or a video chat with Janet Van Dyne, his ex-wife. And he sort of just tells her that, he loves her, and sorry he wasn't a better husband, and that things didn't work out between them, and you really kind of feel bad for him. And it's got to be the first time that I remember seeing a superhero plan to commit suicide, and pretty much I have all of his affairs in order to do it. Like, he even goes as far as, like, the landscaping crew for the Avengers compound. He goes and tells them what he wants done, and like the order that he wants it done. Like, so the place is kind of kept up, everything. Like, it's kind of crazy. And then cuts to basically the end of issue 17. The end is him basically, he's sitting, in his chair, and he has a gun to his head, and he's about a second away from pulling the trigger, and just as he does it, Firebird, but she's going by a different name now, which you'll find that out a little further in the story why. She's like Leia Spirita, I think is the name she's going by now, but she arrives and just as he's about to kill himself and talks him down, and Hank is sort of like, well, I failed at being a hero, 4 times. Like, I'm not made out for this. I'm worthless. And she basically convinces him that, no, you're not worthless. You're trying to do this whole superhero thing, but you are a scientist first before you're a superhero. That's who you need to be. That's the Avenger you need to be, the scientist, not the superhero. So I really like the Hank Pym stuff in this. Like I said, I have a soft spot for this character, and I thought that Steve Englehart really wrote him very well. Okay, so that was Hank Pym stuff, and then we have the Avengers stuff. So the Avengers, they go to look for Firebird, and then they get involved in this whole thing. The villains that they come across are really lame. in the two issues that I just summarized, they fight a motley crew of really lame villains. The first one, Sunstroke, Gilla, a cactus. Come on, that is lame. And Butte, or just Butt because she's lame. It's spelled Butte, so however you pronounce that. But yeah, they're really throwaway villains. The Avengers, they really take care of them, no problem at all. And during this whole thing, for some reason, there's a weird feud going on between Wonder Man and Iron Man. Basically, Wonder Man has a real ego problem because he's like an actor and a Hollywood star, and he thinks that he should be the leader of the West Coast Avengers, and he constantly tries to, butt in and be in charge, even though Hawkeye's in charge, and even if Hawkeye wasn't in charge, Iron Man would be the leader because he's been he has seniority. He's been around since the start of the Avengers, so obviously he would be like second in command. So even as the team is trying to take these lame villains down, Wonder Man is trying to start crap with Iron Man, and never really leads to anything, but it's kind of pointless. But I don't know, I think Wonder Man just lets his ego take over him way too much. Let's see. Yeah, and then it's revealed that all the villains besides Sunstroke are androids, and they are being used by the main villain, I guess, who was Dominus. Well, I guess he was. There was another villain called Lucifer way back in an old issue of Iron Man. Basically, had the same costume, but they say, oh, it's just he's another person who used that costume. But we'll find out more about him later on. And then issue 17 ends with he gets all the Avengers, onto a Doctor Doom time machine and sends them back in time. I guess, well, this came out in 87, so I guess Steve Englehart must have been a big Back to the Future fan. And I guess you could say that the reason that we decided to do this story, because if you've seen a certain movie come out recently there's a similar movie plot that uses this, so that's sort of why we decided to do this story. But then so the Avengers, so they get whisked back in time to 1876. And so they're trying to figure out what's going on, where they're at, because they initially have no idea that where they're at. And when they're out in the desert, luckily they just happen to be in the same place where the Rawhide Kid, the Two Gun Kid, and the Phantom Rider happen to be. Luckily they happen to be right around the hilltop from where they're at. They are... I guess they're attacking a stagecoach caravan run by some of their villains. For those who don't know, these characters, the Rawhide Kid, and then the Two Gun Kid, and I think the Phantom Riders, but basically before and during the Marvel boom of the early 60s, before superhero comics really gained more popularity, Marvel did Western stories too, and two of the titles that they did were the Rawhide Kid and the Two Gun Kid. So these aren't new characters; they've been around for decades beforehand. So this is kind of cool. This is kind of a cool tie-in because they don't really appear in the modern day. They only take place back in the 1800s, so you can't really see them interact with the Marvel heroes too much. I think they do reference another story when they do. But so it's every so often, so that's kind of cool to see heroes interact with these other characters. And the Phantom Rider was the initial Ghost Rider. That's what he was known as. He's not the Ghost Rider that we know. They changed his name when they first introduced Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider, because he was the Phantom or the Ghost Rider, and then the Knight Rider, and then they changed him to Phantom Rider. So they all team up, and they all go and take on, I guess, some of those Western heroes' villains, who are also super, super lame, like Iron Mask and Fat Man. I can't even remember the other ones because they're so forgettable. Red Raven. Hurricane, the Rattler. I mean, I guess they're basically Western supervillains. You can understand them being the antagonists for cowboy superheroes, but I think they're super freaking lame. And obviously, they all get their asses handed to them by the Avengers. They just get beat up. Iron Man rips off Red Raven's wings, and they end up just taking them to the sheriff's office. They beat him real easily. Then Wonder Man takes the time machine to the blacksmith, who his name is Boom Boom Brown. Now, even though this came out in 1987, so obviously, like I said before, I made the Back to the Future joke. This ironically predates Back to the Future 3, where, spoilers, I guess, when Doc Brown accidentally gets sent back to 1885, and he becomes a blacksmith. Doc Brown becomes a blacksmith. In here, you have Boom Boom Brown, who is a blacksmith, and Wonder Man tries to get him to fix a time machine. So I find that a little ironic, and very funny because I'm a huge Back to the Future fan. Anyway, so they discover that the time machine is broken, so they can only go backwards in time. They can't go back to the future. They can only go backwards because the time machine is broken somehow. In reality, what they could have done is just went back to California, waited 9 years, and just hitched a ride back with Marty McFly. But they decided not to do that. But anyway, so then they come up with the idea. Wonder Man suggests that, we should go back to the time of in ancient Egypt, because Rama-WHHUUUUUT is a version of Kang the Conqueror, who, if you know, deals with all kinds of time travel. So I figure that if they go back to there, they have to, then they can use that to hitch a ride back to present day. But in order to test it, they want to make sure that they're able to go back a decent chunk of years. So they go back 100 years, so they're going to go back to 1776. And so they're on the platform, and they are ready to go. And as they're sort of charging up, the Phantom Rider, who up to this point has pretty much been silent. He's sort of like, he's just there. He does fighting, but he doesn't talk at all. He's very mysterious. And he's sort of kind of like how you sort of perceive Moon Knight. He even sort of looks like him. He's covered in all white. But anyway, so he takes up sort of a liking for Mockingbird, and as the time machine is sort of booting up to go back another 100 years, the Phantom Rider comes and clocks Mockingbird in the face and throws her on his horse and keeps her trapped in 1876, while the rest of the Avengers get whisked back to 1776. So, at this point, we're going to have 3 different timelines going on. You're going to have the Avengers in 1776, Mockingbird, who's trapped with the Phantom Rider in 1876, also with Two Gun Kid and Rawhide Kid. And then also you have Hank Pym and Firebird in the present time, 1987, doing their thing. So you have 3 branching storylines for now until you get to the other issues. So yeah, so that's pretty much where the setup for the story pretty much ends. I don't really have much to say about it. I think the art is pretty good. Al Milgrom is the penciler for the whole story. He's worked on a whole bunch of things. He's worked on probably almost every major title as something, whether it's a penciler, an inker, or a writer. He wrote my favorite arc of all time, the Round Robin, that we have covered on the podcast. Yeah, his art is really good. Let's see. Oh, and the inking is done by Joe Sinnott, who is legendary. He's worked on stuff all the way back since the golden days of Marvel back in the early '60s, inking over Jack Kirby. Let's say, and yeah, it is a good. I think it's a good setup for this story. It's gonna obviously branch off into a lot of different stories going on as the story progresses. So I think Steve Englehart did a pretty top-notch job with the writing, kind of keeping everything sort of straight. Yeah, so that's pretty much all for the first 2 issues. Up next, your High Priest Ray is going to cover issues 19 through 21. All right. So, with that, take it away, Ray.
Thanks, Josh.
Geronimo!
Johnson for those reviews of the first 2 issues. Hello, Loonies. This is High Priest of Khonshu Ray. I am looking after issues 19 through to 21. So, for issue 19, part 3, The Time of Their Lives, we have Hawkeye, Iron Man, Tigra, and Wonder Man end up in the Arizona region of 1776, and Clint is in the midst of panic at Phantom Rider grabbing Mockingbird away at the last second, stranding her 100 years in the future. The others calm him down, reminding him that Bobby can take care of herself and that their best hope is reaching their destination to get a properly functioning time machine and then rescue her without time as an issue. Before they can worry about that, they're ambushed by a cavalry of Spanish soldiers. During the ensuing battle, Wonder Man pulls a stunt of grabbing a bunch of the soldiers' guns and crushing them in his invulnerable arms, but this causes an explosion that the not so invulnerable Hawkeye gets caught up in, injuring him badly. The Avengers flee to a nearby cave, but not unseen. A Spanish visionary named Carlota Valdez follows them and offers them medicine, bearing no ill will to them despite the assumption that they represent English spies. Hawkeye starts to recognize Carlota and her stories as the woman from Firebird's vision, and upon questioning, she reveals she has had similar visions of Firebird Esperita and of people that looked much like the Avengers. Hawkeye doesn't want to tell her everything he knows, particularly about how Firebird's vision suggests she's about to die, but he gets an idea of how to take advantage of meeting with Benita's ancestor. He breaks off the head of an inkjet arrow to write a message on a shredded cloth. Benita, we are lost in time. Contact FF. Tell them we're trying for Rama-WHHUUUUUT Egypt, Hawkeye, and has Carlota keep the message somewhere safe. In 1876, as chance would have it, in the same cave, Phantom Rider brews a special Comanche herbal potion to administer to the unconscious Mockingbird, so when she awakes, she forgets all about who she was and only knows that she loves the Rider as much as he loves her. Rawhide Kid and Two Gun Kid are tracking him down to bring him to justice, but now with Mockingbird on his side, Phantom Rider defeats them. As Slade and Bobby prepare to head out to a new hiding place, Bobby trips on the discarded old inkjet arrowhead in the cave and feels something is familiar about it. She decides to keep it as a souvenir. And back in the present, Esperita gets Hank to work through his depression by having him demonstrate the use of his Pym particles, which starts to remind him of the stimulation he finds in science. And as they call it a day, they walk by Benita's family Bible, which she brought with her from home on her visit to the West Coast Avengers compound. As they pass by, they fail to notice the cloth sticking out of the pages with a certain message written in English. So that was 19. Now, issue 20, shortly after that. In 1776, the Avengers fly from the American West towards Egypt, but first make a stopover in Philadelphia to get Hawkeye some medical attention following his injuries in the previous issue. Since it's July of that year, they just barely miss Doctor Strange and Clea, hanging out with Benjamin Franklin. They continue on across the Atlantic Ocean and over Europe until they reach the Sphinx in Egypt. They clash briefly with Ottoman soldiers that are amassed there for some reason, while Wonder Man sets up the time platform. And soon enough they jump back to 2920 BC and are immediately attacked by the Egyptian soldiers there preparing for the Pharaoh's burial rites. The latest skirmish is ended when the Pharaoh's high priest Shamaz recognizes the Avengers as time travelers and is able to talk to them in English. Shamaz explains that the Pharaoh will be entering suspended animation the next day and that he destroyed his own time machine 17 years earlier. He reluctantly lets them into the pyramid to talk to the Pharaoh, but as Rama-WHHUUUUUT is preparing his mind for suspended animation by entering a trance, he isn't very coherent or helpful. He only mutters that he might find more help during his first reign. Hawkeye is growing increasingly frustrated negotiating their way through in spite of his injuries and starts to collapse from fever. His teammates assure him that they can get through on his behalf and that he should rest. Clint relents and assigns Iron Man as interim chairman just before falling unconscious, which irks Wonder Man, who has been competing with Tony for status. They activate the time platform once more to jump back to 2940 BC, when they are immediately shot by the nefarious Rama-WHHUUUUT. In August of 1776, a month after parting ways with the Avengers, Carlota Valdez is travelling across California with her mission when her coach is attacked by Indians. She joins the battle but gets shot in the back. Before she dies, she makes her chaperone promise to guard the message she took from Hawkeye. In 1876, Phantom Rider takes Mockingbird back to Lincoln Slade's hometown of Lordsburg to start a new life with her. As she changes into her new local dress, she decides to wear the old arrowhead she found as a necklace, a choice that Slade doesn't know that to make of, since he recognises the head as something Hawkeye would use. While they settle in, Rawhide Kid and Two Gun Kid are still on their trail. And in the present day, Esperita continues to help Hank rekindle his passion for science by having him go over his expertise in robotics, a subject that Hank isn't as eager to get back into. As they head to the lab, they again just barely miss Hawkeye's message peeking out of the pages of Benita's Bible. And then finally, in issue 21, which I'll cover, we finally get a bit of Moon Knight. And in Egypt, 2940 BC, the evil Rama-WHHUUUUT has shot the Avengers with a paralysing ray. Somehow, despite their costumes and varied appearance, you can't tell the difference between them and Egyptian natives to that time, and just accuses them of being rebel slaves. Confident they will die from his weapon, he has them taken to a nearby temple for burial. The temple they arrive at happens to be one dedicated to Khonshu. While they lie paralysed on the temple floor, the feverish Hawkeye has a vision in which he comes face to face with Khonshu, who explains that he aims for vengeance against Rama-WHHUUUUT and will use the Avengers as his agents, that his hypnotic influence kept Rama from recognising them as non-natives. Hawkeye pleads his case for some extra divine intervention. He wants to return to his own time, but Khonshu's methods can't be too direct. Instead, Khonshu agrees to help deliver a message to someone from their time that can help. The Avengers come to, and Hawkeye's fever breaks. His burns even mysteriously healed. Clint voices his thanks to a nearby statue of Khonshu just before the temple's blind priests enter the room to offer their help in their god's mission against the Pharaoh. In 1876, Mockingbird is starting to shake off the effects of Phantom Rider's potion, just as Rawhide Kid and Two Gun Kid catch up with their trail. When Bobby is alone, Two Gun confronts her dressed as Hawkeye, hoping to jostle her memories. She fights him at first, but one more look at the arrowhead necklace she's wearing brings it all flooding back. She rides off with Rawhide and Two Gun, wanting to kill Phantom Rider for what he did to her. In 1776, Carlota Valdez's funeral ends with her parents and chaperone deciding to return to Mexico along with her Bible. 70 years later, 1847, Ciudad Corazon, a young Isabel Ramirez enters the local mission wanting to read the Bible on the altar. The padre forbids peasants' hands from touching it, but she sneaks a look anyway. When she finds the English note inside, she's hit with a vision that prompts her to steal the Bible back for her own family. And in the present day, Moon Knight is hit with a sudden vision of Khonshu that drives him to have Frenchie fly him to California as soon as possible. At Avengers Compound, Hank and Esperita put the finishing touches on a new robotic creation, Rover, a flying mini-vehicle with an AI of a talking dog. A solution that Hank hopes will make up for his previous mistakes in creating killer robots. He also tests out his new, more practical application for PIM particles, shrinking and storing inanimate objects, like tools and weapons, rather than hazardously to his own body. With these new innovations, Hank Pym is ready to return to adventuring, not as a costumed superhero, but as plain-clothed Dr. Pym. He and Benita share a passionate kiss to celebrate his new lease on life. And back in New Mexico, Dominus wonders if he's truly seen the end of the Avengers. Yes, so rather lengthy synopses there, but basically running the gamut of those 3 issues. I'd like to start on basically the last one, issue 21. We finally get to see a bit of Moon Knight in this zany West Coast Avengers story. So what I really did enjoy about this was the use of Khonshu, and to a lesser extent, I guess, Moon Knight in the issue. But yeah, the way that Khonshu was used against Rama-WHHUUUUT was very cool, and the visuals of Khonshu speaking to Hawkeye with all those multicolored little moons, I guess, was a really cool touch. So it actually gives us a little bit more of a sense of the power of Khonshu here. So we know Khonshu kind of shielded or created an illusion to Rama-WHHUUUUT about the Avengers, and made him think that they were just like Egyptian natives, which was a pretty cool touch. And I like how he bargains here with Hawkeye as well. So very cool introduction of Khonshu. We do see Moon Knight towards the end, and he's very much in the Fist of Khonshu guise, I guess, with his gold bracelets and belt, and well, he's got his scarabs and darts and stuff. So he's very much from the Zelenitz, I think, Warner and Warner run, Fist of Khonshu, the limited edition. But yeah, he also has a bit of a wake-up call here, a bit of a connection to Khonshu. So again, I like the use of how Khonshu, the deity, is used to, I guess, communicate with Moon Knight about the West Coast Avengers' peril. So yeah, I mean, pretty much from the 3 issues that I read, that I'm covering now, this is the first kind of, and we do get a very good kind of intro to Moon Knight as well in the last few pages of issue 21. Like he takes care of these people, these art thieves, and all very well handled. He uses all of his gadgets there. He's got his scarab beetles, and as I mentioned, they look like just straight out blades. And he's got his bolo as well. He trips someone up, and then there's a bit of a trope of someone running in the distance, and he throws something at them, and he knocks them out. But yeah, so you get a nice little action sequence of Moon Knight again. But yeah, his connection with Khonshu, and having seen Khonshu earlier on bargain with Hawkeye was a very cool touch. Now going into, so this arc, it's got so many things going on at the same time. It's let's look at. I'd like to look at the Mockingbird Phantom Rider, I guess, thread. Now this has been quite infamous, I guess, in comic book reading. The fact that Bobby Morse is basically drugged and kept against her will and made to love this guy, Phantom Rider. It's a pretty creepy thing that the Phantom Rider does. funny though, because, you know, at the very beginning, I'm sure Josh would have mentioned it, like the introduction of the Phantom Rider with the Rawhide Kid and the Two Gun Kid. They were older, I guess, Marvel characters, like the Western cowboy kind of influenced thing. I mean, this whole arc has a bit of that as well. It's a bit of a hark back to the old Western comics. There's a nice little origin, I guess, tale of the Phantom Rider, which we see as he kind of reminisces, as he gives the love potion to Mockingbird. So you get a bit of an origin there. He kind of has a bit of Moon Knight going about him, in the fact that, you know, I guess, you know, just all dressed in white. He seems to lurk in the shadows as well. Has a very spectral presence to him. But anyway, there's this one bit here. Oh, gosh, it's in issue 19, where Bobby wakes up from drinking the potion and she says, "Oh, I love you," and he just clutches her and says, "The potion's worked. I'm saved." It's just very, I don't know. It's very weird. Anyway, having said that, I do like the connection, what we get here. So both of them in two different timelines. This is where it all gets really kind of so many things. 100 years before, so in 1776, we have Hawkeye, we have all the Avengers, Hawkeye, Tigra, Iron Man, and Wonder Man in the cave, just trying to help Hawkeye because he got massively injured because of Wonder Man's stupidity. Anyway, so in that cave, for some reason they've this Spanish woman, you know, decides to trot on over because she, you know, saw them fighting, and so she comes over anyway, and she happens to be connected to Firebird, anyway, this cave, it's funny because I like the touch how Hawkeye uses his inkjet arrow, and 100 years later, Bobby finds it when she and Phantom Rider are in there. So that was also a pretty good touch. Look, the other thread is Hank Pym, and I know Josh will probably speak more about it. He, about Pym. Frankly, apart from the dated, I guess, use of dialogue and depiction of Hank Pym being depressed and suicidal, apart from that kind of weird thing to see, I don't know, is I don't know. Firebird, she doesn't have the most inspiring costume. I don't find her the most interesting character, and that rover at the end, that artificial robotic dog, was just way too corny for me. So I know she has quite an integral role in this whole arc because she's had visions of Carlotta and and all that. But but anyway, seeing their development, and at the end they kiss because they've gone through so much together. She's managed to turn Hank around the corner, and for him to see his own worth again. I don't know. I find it the least interesting out of out of all the story threads running concurrently. If anything, we do get to see towards the end of issue 21 the final iteration of Dr. Pym. So no longer Ant-Man, Goliath, or Yellow Jackets. He is now Dr. Pym, and and that's where you'll probably see a lot of Hank Pym just in his civilian clothes. He's no longer a costumed hero, but he uses his mind more than anything to aid his superhero friends. Also, what else have we got here? Other things I wanted to mention. Also, there's this running competition between Iron Man and Wonder Man. I do like how Englehart has them. You constantly hear the bubbles, see the bubbles, their thoughts, and what they really kind of think of each other, and I guess the mounting frustration that they have, and basically it's a bit of an ego, both of them, bit of an ego trip. So that was always quite interesting to see. I really, I kind of like Wonder Man as an Avenger. I was unaware of his kind of personality back in this time. I'm more familiar with him in his black and red costume. I know he's had a fair few along the way. More in his 90s phase. But he's definitely coming across a little bit as a bit of a dick here. So very much an Iron Man player between the two in this arc. But anyway, there's a lot of historical things that the Avengers kind of go through. There was that really cool thing as well. I loved it. Benjamin Franklin. That's it. Where are they? They July 1776. So the Avengers touch down, and they leave Hawkeye in an alleyway, delirious. But yeah, we see Doctor Strange and Clea talking with Benjamin Franklin, and this is awesome because I've read a lot of the older Doctor Strange stuff, and this ties in exactly with one of its arcs as well, where they do meet up with Benjamin Franklin. So I loved how this kind of crossed over, albeit very fleeting. It was a nice touch. So that was pretty cool. Just kind of flicking through here again. They're still all on their way to... we'll get to that later, but... there's a little bit confusing here with... I found this quite confusing, but I guess Rama-WHHUUUUT is just... He seemed to be talking gibberish. I couldn't really make sense of it, but I guess that's the whole idea. So, bouncing back to Mockingbird and Phantom Rider, towards the end of 21, Bobby finally kind of shakes off the love potion, and she gets some really cool help here from Two Gun Kid or Rawhide Kid. I can't remember which one's which, but one of them dresses up as Hawkeye, a bit of a makeshift costume, and he tries to prompt some memories that she has within of her husband or ex-husband. Anyway, so before this anyway, I think Bobby has kind of, subconsciously figured this out, and she runs away from Phantom Rider. So I think Phantom Rider obviously knows something's amiss now, but it's good to see that Mockingbird finally, well, slowly, returns to normal. I'm just having a look here. Sorry, she's battling the pseudo Hawkeye here. But yeah, I mean, she must have, like, she's got that inkjet arrowhead that she's tied around her necklace, her neck as a necklace. So deep down, she had remembered to some extent of her past life, and it's all coming back to her now. So I guess in the later issues, we'll see what will happen to Phantom Rider. I guess Dustin will take us through that. He has a bit of a reckoning to have thrust upon him. Well, I mean, we return to kind of the beginning there, what I was mentioning about the Khonshu, the introduction of Khonshu and Moon Knight being brought into the fray. So it'll be quite interesting to see what will happen. I think Moon Knight's obviously going to, I'm assuming, going to either contact the Fantastic Four to help them, or he's going to do, I don't know, he can't time travel. I don't know what's going to happen. But anyway, it makes for very interesting next few issues, and there's Frenchie as well. Go get him, Frenchie. He's going good. And this other thing. So I'd like to mention again, just finally, as we finish off, the Rover. This is pure ham. It's it looks like I don't know. It looks like something from a kids show. It's a 2-seater. Got 2 bubbles as eyes, it looks like. It pretty much looks like an ant head, but it's more like, it's meant to be more like a dog, I'm assuming. Firebird even says, I thought you were going to call it the Pimmobile, not Rover. Actually, I think the Pimmobile would be even better. But anyway, it has also a VTOL mode, which I didn't know was vertical takeoff and landing mode. Very, very technical. And it can do things like it flies, it shoots flames, acid or gases. Isn't that handy? It climbs, it has grappling capabilities, and there's a picture here of it grappling a car, which looks like Go-Go Gadget arms coming out of it. So, very over-the-top kind of robotic. But anyway, that's, as mentioned, the big thing here is Dr. Pym, is the formation of the new identity of Hank Pym, which is just Dr. Pym. And as I mentioned, he's pretty much seen in civilian gear from now on. So that covers these 3 issues. Sorry, it was all a bit of a jumble, and my head's a little bit of a jumble too. So very 3 entertaining issues there. I will now hand it over to Dustin, Cold Case Kurtz, to take us through the final 3 issues.
Hello, Loonies. This is Dustin here to review West Coast Avengers Volume 2, number 22, 23, and 24. Finishing up the arc that Ray and Josh also reviewed before me. Ray was kind enough to ask me to come on and help out with this pretty massive arc here. So let's go get into it, and we'll start off with West Coast Avengers Volume 2, number 22. Let's see. So, writer was Steve Englehart. Penciler was Al Milgrom. Inker was Kim DeMolder. Colorist was Christy Scheel. Letterer was Tom Orzechowski. Editor was Mark Gruenwald. Now, this issue is called Lost in Space-Time Part 6, The Sands of Time. In 1876, Mockingbird, Two Gun Kid, and Rawhide Kid ride into Lordsburg looking for Lincoln Slade. The Phantom Rider is already onto them, however, and lures them out into his territory where he can fight them using all his illusionary tricks. Mockingbird sees through all of them easily, and together with Rawhide and Two Gun, they force Phantom Rider to run. In 2940 BC, the priests of Khonshu direct the revived Avengers to a hidden path to Rama-Tut's base. Inside, they catch a glimpse of Doctor Strange, also visiting the time frame for dubious reasons, but they're soon too busy fighting Rama's guard robots to help Strange deal with his own robots. They also spot monitor screens showing Rama tormenting a young Fantastic Four. With their fellow time travelers just out of reach, the Avengers instead focus on what they came for, the time machine parts to help them return to their own time. Unfortunately, they're so besieged by Rama-Tut's defenses that they're unable to gain anything useful before the concurrent adventures end, with the facility being destroyed and every other time traveler leaving without noticing them. In 1917, Mexico, a much older Isabel Ramirez shows her granddaughter, Cheetah, the family Bible she had hidden in a tree after stealing it back from the local church. While she's revealing the Bible, a nearby rope bridge collapses, endangering a boy named Benito Juarez. Isabel pulls the boy to safety, though the strain causes her own heart to give out. Cheetah decides to honor her grandmother by cherishing the Bible that was her inspiration. And in the present day, Hank and Benita return to Avengers compound from taking Rover out for a spin, only to be greeted by a trespassing Moon Knight. Hank takes the opportunity to try out his combat skills using the resized gimmicks in his pockets, but Moon Knight isn't there to mess around. He's there to point them to the conspicuous note hidden between the pages of Benita's family Bible. Finally realizing that the other Avengers are lost in time, they race to contact the Fantastic Four, but find they're too late. Reed Richards explains that Dominus's desert dwellers had already arrived and destroyed their time platform. So, I really liked this issue. It was not my favorite. This might have been my second favorite of the entire arc. Doctor Strange was in it. I do love me some Doctor Strange, and it's just the colors were really good. The art's on spot, and the cover. I love the cover. The cover is this Doctor Strange coming is like in his ethereal form, coming out of this coffin thing, while the West Coast Avengers are fighting Rama-Tut's robots on the left, and the Fantastic Four are fighting Rama-Tut, I guess, on the right, and he's just kind of like popping out. It's a really cool cover. And let me see if there's some specific parts that I liked specifically. The whole little story with Mockingbird and what's his name, Phantom Rider. I really enjoy that little arc that goes through with her time period, I guess. Her he's Captain Incel, and he's drugs her and kidnaps her, and she basically has to find out that she's not supposed to be with him, and it's sort of tropey, but it's still fun to read. I enjoyed all that, and there was some stuff that did confuse me a little bit. The part where the priests of Khonshu show the Avengers this tunnel they built into Rama-Tut's complex, and they just so happen to have a map that leads everyone through without activating any of the traps. Now, I believe in the previous issue it mentions that the priests are blind, so I'm not sure where they got this map, or maybe Khonshu gave it to them. I don't know. They don't really elaborate on that. But yeah, it is what it is. I thought it was kind of morbidly funny when, Benito's, was it Benito? Oh no, it's, that Benito's the kid. The, old woman, why am I blanking on her name? she when she rescues the kid, she just like and dies of a heart attack. Like, is very comical, but like still tragic because the woman died. But it's just, yeah, I haven't read a lot of West Coast Avengers, but this is actually the first of West Coast Avengers I've ever read. I don't have much experience with them, but this is for my first read. This is really, really fun. I like, Hank Pym's little redemptive arc. He has this really low in the beginning of the arc, and he comes back and he's super high at the end. And he's got his little like rover thing. He's flying around. That was fun. And then Moon Knight's appearance in here when he just says, "I hopped the fence, and I'm in it." And then he immediately has a fight with Hank Pym, which is very Moon Knight. That was a cool fight. Very nice. And then he just says, "Yep, I got I got this note for you. Khonshu told me to. I did my thing. Hope you're happy, Khonshu." I think that's what he said. Yeah, he said, "Delivered your message, Khonshu. I hope you're happy." So it's just like he's this little servant boy. He's got to do whatever Khonshu says. So I thought that was pretty good. Another part I really liked to this issue is when Doctor Strange gets back into his human form, and he meets this woman that apparently Doctor Strange is a player in ancient Egypt, because he just has this woman and just says, "Yep, yeah, you'll get over me," and then just leaves her because she was like, "Oh, I love you." It's just he loves him and leaves him, I guess. Doctor Strange. I don't think I'll ever get over Wonder Man's eyes. They become this weird red color, and it's like very, very creepy looking to me. I don't know what it is. I don't think I've ever read any Wonder Man, so I guess he does that normally. I don't know. I don't know what that is, but it's really weird. It's like he's, I don't know, like he's like stabbed him in the eyes or something. It's like bloodshot red. Gosh, what else? Anything else to mention? No, I think I got everything with what. Is that everything for this issue? Yeah, I think I'll move on to the next one now. So let's move on to West Coast Avengers Volume 2, number 23. Now this one, the writer again was Steve Englehart, penciler was Al Milgrom, inker was Romeo Tanghal, colorist was Christy Scheel, letterer was Tom Orzechowski, and editor was Mark Gruenwald. In the present, Hank Pym, Esperita, and Moon Knight take Rover all the way to New York to the headquarters of the Fantastic Four. There they examine the wreckage of the time machine destroyed by the Dominus. Hank and Reed begin putting the pieces back together while the thing lugs heavy chunks of machinery all over the place. In 2940 BCE, the Avengers now have only one chance left to get home, Doctor Strange. But first, they must fight through another legion of soldiers loyal to Rama-Tut. The priests of Khonshu and those formerly enslaved by Rama assist the Avengers in their battle, and they battle their way from Rama-Tut's court back to the Sphinx. By the time they get through all of this, though, they learn that Doctor Strange has already escaped and returned home. But Hawkeye still succeeded in keeping his promise to Khonshu by aiding in the overthrow of Rama-Tut. By delaying Rama's guards from imprisoning Doctor Strange's body, they allowed Strange to separate his astral self and use his magic to transform the thing back to a human, allowing him to slip free of his bonds and free the rest of the Fantastic Four, at which point the Fantastic Four forced Rama-Tut to flee into the time stream. In 1876, Mockingbird decides to track down the Knight Rider alone. Racing on a horse through a perilous rainstorm, she finds the rider floating above Spirit Peak. She begins fighting him, but the rider continues to profess his love to her. Mockingbird batters him back with her battle staves, forcing him over the cliff's edge. The Knight Rider manages to grip onto the edge of the cliff and begs Mockingbird to rescue him. Bobby has plenty of time to save the Knight Rider's life, but chooses to let him lose his grasp and fall to his death. The decision will haunt her for many months to come. In the present, back in the present, Hank and Reed complete the repairs on the time machine, along with Moon Knight and Esperita. They travel back to ancient Egypt in the year 2940 BCE. They pick up the rest of the Avengers and then travel forward to Lordsburg, New Mexico in 1876 to pick up Mockingbird. One final trip forward through time and everyone is finally home, and it was all because of Hawkeye's enduring 200-year-old note. So, this one, I I think this one was my favorite. I'm really glad I got to review these three, because these three were definitely my favorite of the arc, and I gotta say, I think this was my favorite. The cover is amazing. It's Mockingbird with Phantom Rider clinging to this cliff, and she's like got her stave, and the West Coast Avengers are like these weird lightning-y silhouettes looking on in horror, and it says vengeance cries the Mockingbird. It's in lightning in the background and rain. It's just very cinematic, intense scene there. It's got a lot of purple in it. I just love this cover. And then the first page has this thing they're doing through the arc where they split every single timeline up and show everything, and now the time is split into 7. And I've liked this whole arc of like these little splits they've been doing. You think it'd be convoluted and get complicated, but they've managed to hold it together. What other part did I like? This part I liked is when Reed Richards says to Moon Knight he had a theory that his powers came from an Egyptian god, and Moon Knight basically says, I have a theory that you can shut the hell up, basically. He was like, I have a theory that exposing secrets to the light of day robs them of their powers, Dr. Richards. And that made me laugh. I thought that was pretty funny. There's a lot of funny moments in this, and especially with like this gets pretty dark in the beginning, so the comedy in it's pretty good. That they make it a little light and time and stuff, like when the Thing trips with his like giant machinery he's carrying and almost kills everybody, and then Hank Pym saves them all with his what's it called, a brace, his 30-ton brace that he makes appear. And the part where they anger the rich people in the village, and the rich people are trying to take out the Avengers, and they have to stop him, but they're not trying to kill him. But he's it's funny that they upset the aristocracy of the ancient Egyptian culture, and that was pretty cool. Then this, it's really prevalent in this one with the Wonder Man, Iron Man like fight thing that's been going on throughout this entire arc. This little tension between the two of them. That's been pretty good. I like that. It's like Iron Man is like this upstart young Avenger is trying to take my place. What is this? And it usually is like Tigra breaks them up. And they're always arguing right in the middle of a fight, like they don't have more important things to deal with. But that is what it is. That was pretty. I like that, the whole little storyline there, which I'm assuming continues after this arc. In this one we find out that Hawkeye created Moon Knight's tools that he got from Khonshu, thousands of years before he actually got them, which I thought I've heard that before, but this is the first time I've ever read that, which it's really cool to see. It's just like I've always heard about Hawkeye. He went back in time and he wrote the note and all this stuff, and now I'm getting to read it, and then we get this cool recap of his backstory, Moon Knight's backstory, which is pretty cool. I like the little Moon Knight head that tells it throughout the whole thing. It's pretty funny. And then this is my favorite part, is the part with Mockingbird and Phantom Rider, when she fights him on this like rain covered cliff, and it's like lightning in the background, and she like knocks him over, and she has probably one of my favorite lines of the entire series, when he's dangling there on the cliff, about to fall. He's like, please, help me, and she just says, drop dead, and he falls to his death. And as soon as that happens, that's when is that when they come back? Oh, and he screams Mockingbird all the way down, apparently. Sorry buddy, she doesn't want you, she wants Hawkeye. What else did I like? I know the rover. I've liked the rover. It talks, and it has like an AI, but he didn't make it smart, so it didn't become like Ultron. And it's pretty funny. I like the little dialogues he gets, especially dealing with Reed Richards' son, who's forgive me, but I cannot remember his name. I don't know why I can never remember that kid's name. Yeah, and then then everybody, then Moon Knight, Hank Pym, and Esperita, they come back and rescue all the West Coast Avengers, and it's Avengers Assemble again, just like in the movie. And and they're like, "Oh, it's Firebird now," and then she's like, "No, I'm Esperita now. Don't call me Firebird. I'm not Firebird no more." And then they go back in time, and then they rescue Mockingbird from. Oh, that's right. She's at this funeral for Phantom Rider, which I thought was nice. She killed him and then went to his funeral. It's a very mafia thing to do. Then when they finally rescue Mockingbird, Hawkeye and her have this really loving embrace, which was nice to see. And then it just ends with them going back forward in time, and then that's where the next issue starts. I really, really, really like this issue. It's just, this is probably my favorite issue of the whole run. I love the conclusion for the Mockingbird arc. It's the dialogue was great. Moon Knight gets this little recap. Really, really good issue. All right, so I'm just going to move on to West Coast Avengers number 24. So, writer for this was also Steve Englehart. Penciler was Al Milgrom. Inker was Mike Mocklin. Colorist was Paul Becton. Letterer was Tom Orzechowski. And editor was Mark Gruenwald. In this issue, Dominus and his minions near completion on the master machine that will enslave the world. Confident that his gambit to trap the Avengers in the past was flawless, he's therefore quite shaken when the Avengers suddenly attack the base in force. Dominus sends the Desert Dwellers out to stop them, including dozens of duplicates of the artificial members Butte, Gila, and Cactus. With their team bolstered by Dr. Pym, La Esperita, and Moon Knight, the Avengers easily gain the upper hand on the henchman Sunstroke. The one human of the Desert Dwellers knows when to fall back and flies up the shaft of the towering silo where Dominus awaits. The Avengers follow, and as they near the top, they're confronted by the costume man they believe to be Dominus. The man takes the moment to explain that he's actually just a vessel through which Dominus speaks. While his race created the master machine to enslave lesser races, they didn't count on becoming enslaved themselves. Dominus is the master machine, and at that moment he's all around the Avengers built into the walls of the upper levels of the silo. Dominus blasts the Avengers with his mind-enslaving rays, completely immobilizing them, then dismisses Sunstroke to another assigned location. As Dominus' vessel walks to the machine controls, gloating about his victory, he doesn't notice Moon Knight walking up and clock him. Not understanding how his enemy could still be moving, he blasts Moon Knight again. But again, Moon Knight shakes it off and pushes forward. Dominus panics, unable to comprehend how someone could resist its power, and its inability to resolve the paradox soon causes the entire machine, and by extension the base, to rumble and burst into flames as it begins to collapse. Moon Knight wisely keeps quiet about how Dominus really was enslaving his minds, but with his multiple personalities he had minds to spare. The Avengers are freed from the effects of the machine and are able to escape the collapsing mountain. As it does, they see the core of the Dominus machine blast off into space on a rocket. The flyers of the team try to pursue, but when Wonder Man's jets stall in the upper atmosphere, Iron Man breaks off to rescue him from the fall. Wonder Man is hardly grateful, arguing that his invulnerable body would have survived the fall, and it was more important to catch Dominus. Nonetheless, the day is saved even though Dominus and Sunstroke escaped. Later, as the Avengers finally return home, Wonder Man is ambushed by his producer's assistant, who is finally able to inform him that everyone hates his new costume. This was a really good ending to the arc. It was very fun. It completed. It made me feel satisfied at the end, even though the bad guy got away at the end. It really it was just fun. The action was fun. The whole Dominus backstory was cool. Like, I did not see that he was the machine itself. I didn't expect that at all. Everybody gets a really cool moment in this little issue. I like the fight where they fight 50 different versions of or 50 clones of Gila, Cactus, and Butte. Which are like the most ridiculous villains I've ever heard in my life. Like Cactus, he's literally a cactus, and he just throws spines, and you can't you cut off his arm, he grows another one. It's and then I like the part where Tigra has like cactus spines in her. She's like, ow, ow, you know, I can't fight until I get these out. It's a really funny moment. And again, we get the Iron Man, Wonder Man argument while they're fighting thing, which, you know, let's focus on the 50 monsters you got fighting, guys. Let's not, you know, deal with your personal problems. Let's go to therapy or something. Come on, guys. You know, Sunstroke flies off because he's the only human. I guess, yeah, he's not a constructor or whatever. Yeah, and then Moon Knight, he does a pretty good job hacking these guys. He's an axe. He just hacks them to pieces. Pretty cool. And Esperita uses the power of God to beat Sunstroke, or to, I guess he doesn't hurt her. I guess she uses the flame of the Holy Spirit or whatever, and he can't hurt her with his sunblasts. And he's a pretty cool villain himself. His costume is very, you know, it's very different. It's like he's got those wings that completely go from his arm to his leg. He's like almost like a not butterfly, but like a, I don't know how, it's like a flying squirrel or something. It's pretty cool. And then he flies. Yeah, it was about the part. I thought this part was funny, where he flies up this like shaft with this like spiral staircase. And they're huffing and puffing up the staircase, trying to run. Hawkeye's like, I'm tired. I'm getting. I can't do this much more. It's pretty good. And then they get up to the top. Pretty cool. They fight Dominus. He kind of pops out on them. And then he has his whole little. He does his blast them with his little mind control ray thing. And then he does this little. He starts monologuing, and which that's funny watching them like all dumbstruck. And then Moon Knight's like, "Yep, I got this." Walks up and like clocks him. I had actually. I was reading it, and I was like, "Wait a minute, is that Moon Knight moving there?" And then he clocks him. I was like, "Oh shit!" Pretty cool. And then he blasts him again. He keeps going, and he's like, then he he punches him, knocks him out, and then that's when everything starts to explode. And then he can't tell him that he's got multiple personalities, or whatever. But being a schizophrenic, apparently he has his superpower here. Pretty cool. Moon Knight saves the day. And they all get out, and Dominus flies off on his giant pink dildo looking rocket, shoots off into the sky, and they run after him. And yet again we get the the Iron Man Wonder Man argument thing here, because Wonder Man starts falling, and because he's got rockets that need oxygen. Idiot. Forgot about that little fact when you're shooting into space. And Iron Man saves him, and he doesn't even give a crap. He's like, I'm invulnerable, why did he fall? Jeez. It's like, God, have some gratitude, dude. I like this part where they talk about they finally went back to the Albuquerque airport to pick up the Quinjet, and it says, has a little asterisk there, it says where it's been accumulating parking charges since issue 17, because it's been parked there for quite a while apparently. It's pretty funny. And then they land, and Wonder Man's agent guy walks up, or producer, and he's quite the character. I don't know what these sunglasses are. It's like 80s throw up on this guy. It's Wonder Man does his red eye thing again, which is like really disturbing to me. I don't get it, but obviously this leads right into the next arc or issue, and with Wonder Man having to decide between his movie career and his Avengers career, and he hates how Iron Man just keeps making fun of him and all this stuff, and that's what it pretty much ends right there. Yep, it ends right there. This one was pretty good. I like this. It was a really good ending to the arc. It was a lot of fun to read. This whole arc was fun to read. It was for what was it? It was like eight issues for this arc, and it was. I didn't feel like it dragged or nothing. It was a lot of fun. All the separate timelines and all that stuff. If you wrote that, you could very easily make that incredibly confusing, convoluted, and just like tiresome, but it didn't feel like that at all. So I gotta give props to Steve Englehart there. He wrote that stuff. The art was always on point. It was just really good art. You know, I can't praise it enough. It yeah, man, it was just a good arc, you know, and I really enjoyed it. I don't think I can say much more about it. Just a lot of fun. I think I'm going to read more West Coast Avengers after this because I think I'm sold. Yeah, so I think that's my review, guys. I want to thank Ray for letting me be on the show, and yeah, have fun, everybody. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, Dustin. Cold Case Kurtz. Thanks for that. Brilliant bit of reviewing. And Josh and Dustin, both of you guys, a lot better reviewing than I've done. As mentioned, my head is a little bit muddled at the moment, swimming around with a virus. I feel like I'm as delirious as Hawkeye was in the issue, or in the arc. Anyway, no, thanks, Dustin, and thank you, Josh, for those reviews as well. And what an arc that was, eh? Lost in Space-Time. That certainly one worth reading, Loonies. Once Midnight kicks into gear there, it gets pretty fun indeed. As a bit of a spectacle, before we sign off, I wanted to raise the opportunity again for those Loonies listening and milling around in the ITK community. We do have a prize giveaway for our huge episode 100 coming up in about early to mid-June. So I posted something up earlier. If you haven't managed to catch it, and if you just enjoy having a good old listen to the podcast, what you need to do is send in your name and postal address, and if you answer this question correctly, what material is Moon Knight's armor made of in the Vengeance of the Moon Knight run or series? So what material is Moon Knight's armor made out of in the Vengeance of the Moon Knight run by Greg Kurtz, and I think it's Jose Pena? Anyway, I'm really sorry if I got that wrong. But anyway, so if you send that in, just send it to itkmoonnight@gmail.com. It will go into a hat or something, and on the episode 100 recording day, it will be drawn out of a hat. There'll be 3 prizes, I think all similar prizes. They're just a stack of Moon Knight comics. So get your entries in. We've already got a fair few in. That's really good to see. And yeah, best of luck with that. So next phase, we will have... in the episode that precedes our huge 100th episode, we have another Isla Ra. So I believe that is a waning gibbous. So we got in touch with one of our another Looney, and he is Midkind Hitsuzan. And it was really great fun to chat with Midkind about, or as you'll hear in the episode, referred to as MK, appropriately enough. Yeah, we go through his Isla Ra books. He hails from the Philippines, so yep, the ITK community is truly global, and it was really fun to go through his comics. As usual, I'll encrypt them, but if you want a sneaky peek, in the episode summary, just hit the links. They're pretty hard to come by, I believe, unless you maybe order them online, because I think, well, a couple of them are local comics, but they are ripping reads. So that is in our next episode, episode 99. Now, Loonies, before I sign off, the obligatory blurb. You can catch us at itkmoonnight@gmail.com. We have a Facebook page, facebook.com/ITK Moon Knight. We have a group, facebook.com/groups/ITK Moon Knight. We're on Twitter @ITK Moon Knight. We also are on Instagram, Tumblr, YouTube. Just search for Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. We're also a proud member of the collective, so you can listen to other great episodes or other great shows out there like the Inner Demons Ghost Rider podcast or Signal of Doom, a comic book podcast, or the Sons of the Dragon and Immortal Iron Fist podcast, or Defenders TV podcast. There is a whole pantheon of podcasts, really, really cool podcasts, and we all have the same kind of mindset of just sharing the love, so please do check them out if you can. Also, iTunes ratings, it'll be great if you can drop us a review. Obviously be honest. If there's something that you'd like to see on the show, we're always happy to improve and to add segments. We like to keep it fresh too. So, an iTunes rating will just help us get out there a bit more. So with that, Loonies, I must bid you adieu. And once again, a huge thank you to Josh,
Geronimo!
Johnson, and Dustin, Cold Case Kurtz for their awesome reviews. Thanks, guys. You guys have weighed in on this episode and fantastic reviewing as well. Always welcome. And as always, may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Catch you later.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.